First of all, I've read your book, the Lead with a Story and Sell with a Story. I'm a huge fan because I found a lot of my answers in your books, and I'm currently trying to invent this whole storytelling thing here in Russia because I've read in Lori Silverman's books that there's a national storytelling association in America and all whole more stuff to enhance the storytelling in society, but we don't have such mechanisms, such institutions. And well, first and foremost, I'm interested in how to improve storytelling inside Rosfinance, where I work currently. It's a bank. It's a part of Societe Generale. Well, you know of them for sure because it's international group. And the first question I really want to ask is, how do I persuade a CEO? And maybe there are some numbers I can give. Like, I know that it's some kind of euphemism, but maybe there is something that connects storytelling to the business results, like ROI and stuff.
Yeah, so that's a fair question. I'm not sure that I'm going to have a very satisfying answer for you. I can't tell you, there's a study that shows that storytelling improves sales and profits by 30%. I don't think anything like that exists. I have seen some attempts to do it, and I think I just found that by Googling them, I don't have any personal connection to them. I think I did not include any of those in my books for a reason, and the reason is because I'm not sure I believe the results, because I don't know of anybody who's ever been running a business and changed one thing that they were doing, started telling stories, but didn't change anything else, and then see what happened to the business results. Because that's the only way to know for sure. Because in a business, there's all kinds of things happening all the time. Competitors launching products, new advertising campaigns going on and off air. Your business results could be a result of so many different things, and it's just impossible to isolate, the leaders started telling more stories. Oh, and that's why sales took off. So even the ones I've seen that do that, I'm a little skeptical. So I try not to focus on selling the business result because I know I can't prove that that's the case. I think most people get intuitively that storytelling is a better way to lead people. And so, or a better way to sell and market. And if they get that, then I think the business result they'll assume will naturally follow. And I think it does. I just don't know that you can connect all those dots. So I try and help them see how and why storytelling is better for leadership, sales, and marketing. That it's a better vehicle to do those things on an intuitive basis. And once they understand that, they'll just assume that the business results will follow.
Okay. That's a great answer, actually, because I didn't assume that there would be like strong numbers, like 15% of ROI went up. No. Okay, great. Maybe you could tell me a story of a company where there was no storytelling or like minimum amounts of storytelling, and where there was a project where you went in or someone went in and built this culture. How did it work?
So, I do that for most of my clients, and of course, most of the clients don't want to be named and confidential information given, but many of them know that they want to be better at storytelling. In fact, here's the other reason why I don't use any data to try and prove that storytelling improves business results, because I don't do any outbound marketing of myself. So I am never in the position of having to try and convince somebody that storytelling is effective, because 100% of the time somebody hires me to teach a training class, it's because they came to me and asked me to.
No.
So they've already decided, and it's because they read my book, or they just have learned on their own that they know they need to be better at storytelling, and they Google experts in storytelling, and my name comes up. So while it's true that I sometimes find myself in the position to try and convince them that they should hire me instead of you or somebody else to teach them storytelling, I'm never in the position to have to try and convince them that storytelling is a good thing to do. They would have never called me if they didn't think that already. So, but when they do come to me, I teach them the art and the science of storytelling. And I actually have a 6-month program where after the training course, I help them make that storytelling more of a habit, of a cultural change. So every 2 weeks after the training course, I'm sending them an email with an encouragement to think of, develop, and tell a new story they've never told before, using the skills that I taught them in class, a little refresher, a quiz on something, a 1-question quiz on something they learned in class, and then a link to a video of me teaching them, a 3 or 4 minute video of me teaching them something that they've never learned before, that I didn't teach them in class, so that they can continue to learn. So really, I conduct a 6-month immersive culture changing program, not just a 1-day training program.
Oh,
That makes
that makes sense. This program, do you include leaders, or there are like groups of people in there? How does it work? Maybe, could you share some, or is it, if it's not confidential, of course? I mean, the whole structure.
Well, I mean, everybody that comes to one of my full-day training classes gets the 6-month program. So if you and 25 of your peers hired me to come teach a training class, all 23 of you would get these emails for the next 6 months.
Oh, so basically, it's the 6 month thing is like emails during this next 6 months plus this 1-day training as a start.
Correct.
Oh, great! That's a good system.
And
okay.
And as an example of of a company wanting to use stories and hiring me to help them create stories to improve the results of the business. One of my clients is a pharmaceutical company, and it takes 15 or 20 years for their products to get to market because they have to go through all the testing and certification. They wanted to reduce that to like 5 to 7 years, which would require major changes in how they do their drug development and testing and qualification. It's a huge cultural change at the company. And so they hired me to help them make that change. And so what I did is we spent 2 or 3 days together developing 3 stories that would help them convince the organization to go through this massive change. One was a case for change story, like a story to help them understand why doing what they're doing now isn't good enough, right? The second story was the vision story. Okay, well, if what we're doing today is not good enough, what do you want to do? So it was a second story to help them see, here's what we want our future process to look like. And then the third story was to convince them that it actually could work, because they've tried this before 5 times in the past and it's failed every time. So a case for change, a vision story, and a story to help them believe that this time it will really work. So 3 stories we developed, and then the leaders could go and tell the organization those 3 stories to get them engaged and working hard to make this big change in their drug development process. Now, that was only a couple of months ago, and it's going to take years for it to work. And so I have no idea if it worked yet, but that's the kind of thing that storytelling can become a cultural shift in how the leaders talk about their changes, instead of just bossing them around and saying, damn it, you need to get those drugs ready in 5 years. Bossing people around doesn't work very well, but those inspiring stories can.
Yeah. Sounds really inspiring, because I was looking forward for like something like, and it worked in 5 years or 7 years. Well, how the story works.
Ask me again in 5 years or 7 years, and maybe it will have worked. I don't know.
Okay. You actually, there's a question that I would like to ask on a different topic. You have several methods of finding and a good story in your book, the lead with the story. The ones I like the best is holding a contest, which basically is like a good way to do anything with the employees. And the second one is holding a storytelling session. Maybe you can tell me a story, or which method do you prefer in your work to find and grab those stories?
Yeah, so those are two of my favorite. I think they're very effective. Um, the easiest one to do, though, is, and I think I mentioned it in there, I'm not sure, is just at every team meeting, assign a different person the job of sharing a new story. So if your team has a team meeting once a week for 2 hours, next week it's your turn to share a story. The week after that, it's my turn. Then it's Bob's turn. Then it's Sally's turn. And everybody takes a turn, and they know that, you know, every time there's a team meeting, somebody's going to tell a 4 or 5 minute story, and they're going to pick that story based on what they think would be the most helpful story for the other team members to learn from, and maybe to add to their repertoire of stories they can tell that will help them accomplish some goal as well. So just make it a regular part of every meeting, 5 minutes, and it's simple, and everybody knows it's going to happen, and they know when their turn is. Those other methods require a lot more work. I mean, setting up a contest and conducting it and getting people to submit them, and storytelling sessions require a special meeting to get set up. That's not terribly hard, but it requires a little bit of extra work. But adding it to the team meeting requires like literally no extra work. Just make a decision, and every week it happens.
Nice. If you don't have access to those employees that tell those stories in a row, how do you? What mechanisms do leaders use to inspire them to share those stories? Because I have an issue. We have an issue as a culture, I guess, in Russia that, opposed to the open-minded mind of an American or a European citizen, we have like reversed and closed hearts. We're hard to share, but when we do, we share everything. Like it's a national thing. But are there any maybe tricks to break this ice?
Yeah. So by the way, it's the same in Germany. They're very stoic and don't like to tell personal stories. Compared to Latin America or the U.S. Yeah. So I get the cultural differences. I think, as you can tell, when you do open up and share stories, it can be very effective.
Yeah.
I think just sharing examples of when people did that and how effective it was will help convince them. So there's a story in my first book about a guy named Jamie Johnson. Do you remember that one? It was the
Oh,
story.
Jamie, the one who told his story on the team building session about his brother or a cousin.
Yes, that one where his brother committed suicide.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
harsh.
yeah. So share that story with people, not just the story about the brother and the suicide, the story about Jamie Johnson,
Yeah.
the whole story about him and how he wasn't very effective at work until he started sharing these stories, the story about his brother, and then all of a sudden he became a much more effective leader. That kind of a story can convince people that, oh, maybe I should share more stories at work too, and maybe I'd be a more effective leader as well. That's the kind of story that will convince people.
Wow, that's strong. I've never thought of it as a story to convince the ice breaking process. That's great. Thank you. Um, one more question. Based on the book, the lead with the story one, the leaders basically have something like a barrier. They don't know where to use those stories. And you give a great example of a letter where there is a story inside a letter, how to convey it. Maybe you could give me an example or some ways that are like are not in the book. How else do you use a story? Which ways are like?
Oh, yeah. So I coach people to use stories anywhere leadership happens. So in a one-on-one conversation like you and I are having right now, I can share a story. In fact, I kind of just did, in hallway conversations, on telephone calls, in memos that you write, in emails that you write, on your website, in your marketing materials, on your television commercials, like literally anywhere human beings are having conversations, you can put a story in, and even if it's in writing. So I tell people that the storytelling techniques that I teach are vehicle agnostic, meaning the delivery vehicle doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's in writing or on video or on a phone call, or it doesn't matter. The same storytelling techniques work in all of those communication vehicles. So, and great leaders use storytelling in all of those vehicles, in speeches they give, in memos they write, in emails, all of them.
Great. That's really inspiring. Okay. Actually, we've covered pretty much all the questions I wanted to ask. One more thing. Imagine a situation where an HR department or like an HRT wants to deploy the storytelling machine in all its might, and asks you to come. And then the situation happens when you come to the meeting, and for example, a CEO or a financial director who are strange to the whole idea of the HR departments. They think they're like some lunatics and have a lot of fantasies. What would you? What story would you use to convince those people without the HR background? Like maybe they are not even familiar with the word storytelling. Where would you start?
So I would typically, when I'm doing a training class, the first thing I do is share an example of a story that will illustrate the value of storytelling. So the first story in my book about the jury tables, remember that one?
Yeah, that's great.
So that I lead off with that story to help people see how powerful a story can be. Or have you read my Sell with a Story book?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Pig Island story on page 1. If I'm talking to salespeople, I tell the Pig Island story, and then, so I tell the Pig Island story, and then I say, now, the artist who took that picture could have tried to sell me that picture by giving me a regular sales pitch. He could have said, all right, look, Paul, there's 3 reasons why you need to buy this picture of the pig. First reason is because it's the right size to fit in your bathroom at home. The second reason is it's the right color palette to match the wall, the color of the wall and the towels that you have, because your wife's already showed me the picture. And the third reason is because it's in the right price range that you already told me you're willing to pay. And that's why you should buy the picture. And those would be 3 very logical, rational reasons to buy the picture. But there are probably dozens of pictures at that art fair that met all 3 criteria. But there's only one picture at the art fair that had a story attached to it, and that's why that's the picture that's hanging in my bathroom upstairs, right? So I tell them the story, and then I tell them the way somebody normally would have tried to accomplish the same thing without telling a story, and let them see the difference. It's the same thing with the jury table story. I tell the jury table story, and then I say, now, if you weren't going to use a story, how would you convince somebody that it's important to always be clear on your objectives up front? Well, you just have to tell them, well, in my 20 years in the business, I've learned that it's very important to be clear on your objectives up front. You should do that every time. Like, okay, but like that will just go in one ear and out the other, because that just sounds like common sense. Well, duh. But unless you're thinking about that at the moment you start your next research project, you might not be clear on the objective. It's impossible to not think about being clear on your objectives every time you start a new project. So I always give them both versions and just let them decide which one is more effective. And they always come to the conclusion that the story is much more effective than the speech or the admonition or the bossing them around or the sales pitch.
Wow, that's really inspiring. I'll try those.
Yeah, so just tell your best story, and then tell them how you would accomplish the same communication objective without a story, and just let them see the difference.
Right. That's actually a kind of a story of 2 ways. Like the ones in the media or in the marketing, they use it all the time. Like, use Colgate. Well, if you don't use Colgate, well, you get no peace.
Yeah.
That's great. That's really inspiring.
But the difference is, though, you're letting them decide. You're not telling them, hey, storytelling is great. Here are the reasons why. Here's my great story. I mean, you can say that also, but but you're letting them decide. Here's a story. Here's the way to accomplish the same thing without a story. Which one do you think was more effective? And if it was a great story,
Right.
of course, they'll conclude the story was more effective.
Great. That actually looks like a principle of 2 plus 2.
Yeah.
You know, the one, yeah, basically. Okay, I've actually covered. Yeah.
So
Sorry.
are you now in the business of storytelling, training, or coaching in Russia? Is that what you're doing now?
Well, I'm apt to because I work in a bank. I'm a learning and development manager, but also I'm doing a storytelling project. So I'm teaching storytelling based on several books and several trainings I've been through, and I try to coach this in Russia because as surprising as it was to me, I don't see any company or even any individual who would like do this projects that I do, like come to a company and invade them with storytelling. There's no one, and well, maybe I'm blind to something and I'm blindfolded, but I see this as a grand resource. I feel a mission, an urge to do this in Russia.
Yeah. Well, so if I can help you, in any other way, let me know. I'm happy to come and teach a training class, but it would have to be in English. And if that's not effective, then I probably couldn't help you. But I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. Well, I hope I will be able to organize something to invite you in because I would like to talk personally and maybe share some knowledge and hear your stories. Thank you so much. This was very insightful, and hope to hear it from you again. And I guess we'll stay in contact, right?
Yes, very good. Cheers.
Thanks. Thank you, Paul. Have a nice day.
You too.